Welcome, everyone. We're so happy you're here. This is the Miracle series of readings from the Patrick Heath Public Library, and this is our final reading for this year. And we will be reading tonight from the Easing the Edges, a collection of everyday miracles, the anthology that is now available on Amazon. And we have several wonderful contributors here tonight to read for us. And I'm going to read their names so you'll know who's coming, and then we'll introduce each one. Tom, Spirit Tom from Dripping Springs in Austin, Susan Donnelly, Shara Booker, Rachel Jennings, Sandy Stromberg, and Cindy Heiser. Welcome all, and thank you all so much for agreeing to read for us tonight. I am so happy about this book. It makes me very happy to read it. And every time I do, it warms my heart. So that is what I was going for. And I hope that all of you have the same kind of experience as you listen tonight to these beautiful contributions. I would like to say to begin with that I did make some pushcart nominations from the anthology this year, and I did send an email around to everyone, so you should know who those people are, but Rachel Jennings was one of those people. So congratulations, Rachel, for your nomination, and good luck to you. Woo, join the thousands. But it's a wonderful thing, and I loved your poem. I love all these poems and pieces of prose, so it's very hard to choose, but I really enjoyed your work. So thank you again for your contribution to the anthology, and I hope you win. Why not you? But I would love that. It would be a kudos, a feather in my cap too. Look what I chose. I chose a pushcart prize winner. Like that. I'm not ego driven or anything like that. So, all right. So our very first reader tonight. Hi, Ken. Welcome. We're glad you're here. I've already done all of little. So, Spirit Tom is going to read first for us tonight. And if you all will just mute yourself while he's reading, and then unmute and say hooray, or say whatever you want to Tom, and or give him a little reaction, some sort of reaction, thumbs up.
Or stay on and read with me. It's on page 5. So it's great to read together.
Go for it, Tom.
Here we will. Let's start with the myth that miracles are a myth. I will settle for little miracles, for minor acts of astonishment. Start with breathing, largely unconscious, unless its absence enforces attention. Next, mobility, to move and be moved by magical moments. This encourages change as stasis turns to kinesis. Your life, my life, is a moving experience on a moving planet among stars and galaxies and constellations that also constantly move. And you and I are barely a dot in this matrix of moments. Third, connection, communication, to link to consciousness in whatever form it presents itself. Flowers, gardens, pets, friends, birds, bees, butterflies, beauty, as diverse as our responses tonight. And here you are now, after only 3 noted miracles. And this is only the beginning. And page 6, sing along with breath, prana, chi, ka. Here we are, on a unique and impossibly blue planet, dreaming Elon Musk's multi-planet options, seeking moon bases, Mars explorations, sending satellites into deep space to photograph, seeing through the eyes of Hubble telescope. To a primitive, all of this is a miracle. To fly among the heavens, to own a space station, to use it as a staging center for more explorations, to go beyond imported oxygen, to make gardens on the moon, to find water on Mars, to seek out extraterrestrials. Here is where science fiction fails us, and science begins. Here is where we start to live beyond miracles with breath, prana, chi, and ka. And on page 7, sing along. What if it is true that this world is exactly what you think it is, that there are no limits at all, that energy flows where your attention goes, that now is your moment of power, that to love is to be happy with, that effectiveness is always the measure of truth. If it works, use it for good, that the ascription of miracles is only clear observation of the many possibilities inherent in each instant. Magicians, occultists, shamans, examples of the way our senses require love to be applied to change. Nothing will ever be the same, but you do not need to believe in nothing. And the last one on page 90 is giving it all away, which I suppose we should do. Tell me, what do you value most? I value knowledge, often found in random books. So my library is this universe, Akashic records, recycled reads, and I buy and share and give books away as caches of wisdom and value their propensity to animate and illuminate this prosaic existence into clear poetics. Once when I was bushwalking in the Yuyangs near Geelong, I left books on the rocks in the bush to share with random travelers there, who made their time slow to walk and meditate. I learned this from youth hostels with books left behind by random travelers. This way, astrology, Zen, and the art of free books, book sharing, book gifting. From Uluru Hostel to London backpackers, I found and left and shared books from cultures I would otherwise not ever have known about. I still have a free library outside. I still receive and give books away. But some people value money, coins and notes, property, ownership, domination, and control. So I used to leave little silver coins in water to be found by their shine, not serious enough to distract from the illumination of random gifting, but bright enough to bring instant delight to anyone. Some I know still glue coins to streets. Others add books to public and private libraries. Still more add their wares to inventories of record stores and shops just for the element of surprise. Reverse shoplifting, call it shop gifting. Tell me, what do you give away? Thanks for listening. Thanks for doing this. A wonderful
So
enterprise.
much fun.
Delightful.
So much fun. Thank you, Tom, so much for being here and for your bubbles, effervescence,
No choice.
and your intelligence and your beautiful words. Thank you so much for coming.
Grateful.
And Tom does have to go a little early, so
Yeah.
say goodbye now because he'll leave in a minute.
I will.
Also, look at the chat if you want to, because in the chat we have the names of Tom's new books and his email address. So if you're interested in hearing more about what Tom is up to word-wise, you can look at that and copy those links. And we also have, I think Loretta was going to put her book in there. There it is. When Darkness is in Full Bloom. And so copy that link and do all that before we close, because that'll go away, of course, when we're finished. So
Bye-bye, and thank you.
that for you. Bye, Tom. Mwah. Thank you.
Thank you.
Excellent. Okay. Now, our next reader is Ms. Susan Donnelly. Where did you go, Susan? Oh, there you are. When someone pops off the screen, it moves everybody around. And then I'm like, where'd you go? Susan, welcome. Tell us a little bit about you, if you have a book or anything. You did tell us at the beginning.
No, I'm way too new for that. I've had some pieces published, but no. You know, I considered myself a dabbler, but I'm having such fun dabbling. And the woman that I've been working with has encouraged me to send things out, and that's great. So it's fun. It's just fun. So, and I'm all about finding things that are full of joy. That's just a good thing to do. So greetings from Portland, Oregon. And I do want to thank all of you who put so much work in. Obviously, the book is beautiful, so the amount of work, I can only imagine what it must have taken to accomplish this. So thank you very much. So, the first poem that I'm going to read is appropriate for somebody from Oregon, where it's often wet. So those of you that don't live in wet places may not enjoy it as much, but here it is. It's called Mud Puddle Magic. Oh, darling mud puddle, you shallow collection of earth and sea, droplets that once roiled in the broad Pacific, and others that rippled over rounded stream rocks, sweat that dropped from the brows of grizzled loggers, and tears squeezed from exhausted farmers desperately praying for rain. I've learned to read your liquid face like tea leaves patterning a century-old porcelain cup, or tarot cards spread in a Celtic cross. You are an oracle. And today, your stillness promises much, like a cautious new lover whose tranquil kiss hides deep passion and even deeper hope. My tendency is to wake early and go walking early. I used to have a dog that loved to walk when it was still dark. My current dog sleeps in, but I still walk early. So it's called It Is True. It is true that whole chunks of my life are collecting dust while I sip strong black coffee and inhale lavender French lilacs, stroll before sunrise, and then sift gravel with my fingers. I don't even mind if the sky doesn't approve and pelts a cold rain reprimand. I've learned that the judgment of clouds is random and that each day is freshly brewed. And the last piece is, it's actually the last poem in the book. I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing, but it's where it is, and I like it there, so it works for me. I wrote it in the spring. Daffodilian Tribute. Carry on, O cheery daffodil, you golden harbinger of spring, you wild yet cultivated native of meadows and woods. Push through the moist loam. Keep faith and ignore those who claim you are the bastard child of an egotistical Greek youth who fell in love with his own reflection. Push through February's last snow. Reject those who misunderstand why you need 3 names, Daffodil, Narcissus, Jonquil, who don't understand that you are 3 times more loved than lesser single appellated flowers. Push through to brilliant sunshine. So carry on, O cheery daffodil, you who prove rebirth, beauty, and good fortune are in hand. Push through to paint all of our hopes golden. That's it. So
lovely. That poem touched me so because of all we're pushing through, all of us in all of our lives for different reasons. And that line about that the jonquil proves that hope and rebirth are possible just really was like, okay, that's perfect for what I'm trying to say here. And I think it might have been February of this year in Texas when everything froze and everything stopped, that I was probably reading these poems. So I was like, yes, this poem, which was also probably another influencer for me. But thank you so much.
I so love seeing them, and they're coming up in the February these days now because it is warmer. So it's they're very special. I love them, and thank you for the
You're
chance to
welcome.
read. So,
You're welcome, and thank you so much for reading for us tonight. Our next reader is Shara Booker. And Shara, tell us a little bit about who you are and anything you may have published lately that you want us to know and read for us.
So is it okay to read some from some of the other people in the book too? Or would it be better to read my piece first and then afterwards, or whatever?
It's your time, whatever you would like to read. is
I
good.
just wanted to
We're
check.
just reading from the anthology. That's
Okay.
the only parameter.
Okay. All right, so I'm Dr. Shara Booker. I work in nonprofit healthcare, my day job, but my dream job is to be a writer and a poet, which I am. I'm a published poet. This is my first prose piece that I've had published, so I'm kind of excited about that. But what I'd like to read first from the anthology is from one of our well-known San Antonio poets, the slam poet, Eddie Vega. And I just love his contribution. I really loved meeting him at the Art and Book Fest, or the Book and Art Fest. So it was really fun. So I thought, yeah, let's do Eddie's piece. It's called The Sage of Olmos Park. The cold front was coming. I went to stock up on supplies and decided I wanted to make caldo. Usually I make it with chicken, but I was feeling more and more like this was a beef occasion. So there I stood, trying my best to look like I knew what I was doing as I scanned the entire section for soup bones. There were plenty of steaks, round, 7, sirloin, skirt, even ribeye, but no huesos for caldo. I saw a vacuum sealed pack that looked like it could be right. It was one of 2. Having not made this but once in my life and never shopping for it though, I just wasn't sure. That's when she appeared. A short lady, gray-haired, wearing a long skirt. Her mask was one of those that looked like it had once been destined to be a peasant top, pink with yellow embroidery, but instead had ended up covering the Sage of Olmos Park. Excuse me, but is this the one for caldo? Si, mijo, take that one. She couldn't see my smile, but I knew she could sense it. I felt a warmth overcome my body, as I'm sure she had just passed on her blessing and sent me the recipe with her spirit. Every vegetable appeared in my mind's eye, every herb was breathed in, every ratio of water and salt became part of my hand's muscle memory. Time had stopped, but it was slowly starting again. I dropped the pack into my cart and looked back to wave at her, but she was gone. I searched for her in both directions, but there was no trace of her. Somewhere, a violin played, then a flute. A rooster crowed. Mockingbirds sang morning music. I went back to my shopping. I love that, that so much. So that's the one from Eddie. I think Dee knows this from previous readings, but I'm a huge fan of Sheila D.C. Robertson. I love all of her pieces in the book, and I want to just read one of hers. It's called Acceptance. The wrinkles in the mirror, braided and threadbare as a comfortable rug, each line a highway map of some past state of mind. My nearsighted eyes, magnified, wide open, no longer see so many dust motes. Along the way they gained insight, tolerance and acceptance informed my heart to embrace smaller acts of love. White hair grows wispy, like the memories and connections gambling in my head. There is a welcome mercy to the lazy, softer days I encourage myself to inhabit. In a worn and patched maze of time, the unimportant is displaced, hard edges disappear, disappointment softens, and forgiveness becomes my healing grace. Oh gosh, I love her stuff so much. So my piece is, it's actually an encounter. Sorry, finger slipped, I muted. I'm back. This happened last year around Christmas time. The name of this piece is called Hear the Angel Voices. It was a gray December day outside my clinic building in the disjointed week between Christmas and New Year's Eve when I was called by the office staff. They informed me that the patient who I expected for an appointment 20 minutes ago had just arrived. With a sigh, I rose from my computer where I'd been diligently trying to catch up with the other 5 patients I'd seen this morning. And I made my way to the waiting room to collect my wayward patient. As I walked, I tried to calculate how I could see her and not manage to sink the rest of my afternoon into a bog of delays for my other patients. Somehow, I also hoped to take 5 minutes to throw some food in my mouth later as well. In my mind, I mulled over what I knew about Mrs. W., an 88-year-old patient. She was scheduled for a lumbar puncture with a neurologist later in the month to see if removing some cerebral spinal fluid from her system would have significant effect on her function and progressive dementia. My task, as charged by her neurologist, was to take a baseline of her physical function prior to the lumbar puncture in order for the team to determine more objectively if improvement would occur later. I thought of all the tests and outcome measures that I needed to perform. When I reached the waiting room, I heard a small melodic voice coming from the far side of the room. It was full of joy and singing in a way that filled up that corner, causing several of the patients to stare and wonder. As I approached, Mrs. W. and her sister looked up at me. Mrs. W. did not stop singing. As I introduced myself, her sister greeted me, but Mrs. W. did not acknowledge my presence much, excepting the icy blue gaze that she fixed on me. She's pretty much like this all the time when she's awake. She sings, said her sister as an explanation of her behavior. With an accepting nod, I started to push Mrs. W. in her wheelchair towards the PT gym. Sometimes she sings actual songs, but sometimes she just makes up her own song, continued her sister as we made our way into the clinic room. When we reached the room, I sat down on a stool at eye level in front of Mrs. W. Her eyes were looking in my direction, but I had the impression that she was looking through me and past me. I started my examination of cognition to get a general sense of her ability. I asked her a basic orientation question. Can you tell me your name? By speaking to her, I drew the icy blue stare towards me for a moment, but she shifted her attention away from me slowly. The long pause continued until it became an awkward silence. Eventually, her sister spoke up. Now, Sissy, you need to tell her your name. Mrs. W.'s eyes moved quickly to her sister's face at the sound of her voice, but she said not a word. After checking a box in the score sheet for my test, the scientist in me pushed on for several more questions. Their fate was just the same as my first question. They lay hanging there in the air like motes of dust floating in the silence. Suddenly, Mrs. W. began to hum a tune and started to sing a nonsensical stream of lyrics that seemed to be about a banana. I tried in vain to get her to follow some single-step commands to assess her movement, but realizing the futility of my task, I turned my attention to her sister, who was sitting next to Mrs. W.'s wheelchair. She was following my words and movements intently. I recognized a glimmer of hope in her eyes. She told me her sister's story, one which involved a lifetime love of music and singing. She mentioned that her sister's faculties had gradually declined so that she'd been unable to bear the burden of her sister's care. She spoke with a shadow of guilt and sadness in her voice when she mentioned needing to arrange for her sister to live in a memory care section of a nursing home. With a sigh, I sat down on the stool in front of Mrs. W. I struggled with what my next step would be. As it slowly dawned on me that no more physical therapy would be happening during this session, I turned toward Mrs. W. and I took a deep breath. In my very neglected alto voice, I began to sing a Christmas carol that had been a favorite of my grandmother's, O Holy Night. O holy night, the stars are brightly shining. It is the night of our dear Savior's birth. As my shaky melody filled up the air between us, I saw Mrs. W's eyes snap up towards mine. She drew in a breath, and as I started the next line, Mrs. W started to sing with her amazing soprano voice. She joined her voice with mine, her strong voice propping up my precarious alto. Long lay the world in sin and error pining till he appeared and the soul felt its worth. On the next line, her sister added her voice to the duet, rounding out our trio. A thrill of hope, the weary world rejoices, for yonder breaks a new and glorious morn. The hustle of the surrounding clinics stopped, and some of the nearby therapists and patients paused their conversations, looked in our direction, and listened to our impromptu serenade. Fall on your knees, oh, hear the angel voices. O night divine, O night when Christ was born. O night divine, O night divine. As the last note stopped, I looked into Mrs. W's eyes. She was smiling at me, a first in our interaction. She was engaged, and her look seemed to say that somehow I had finally found a way to connect with her. I realized even though Mrs. W had the ability to connect to my world, that she was in her own world, a world where there was only music and song. She did, in fact, hear the angel voices. From that state of grace, she had opened a pathway to engage with me despite her dementia. Through song and the peace of the Christmas season, we had made a healing connection. She showed me a truth. Music can help to heal and to make a personal connection. Epilogue. Since discussing this anecdote with colleagues, I received information about the Grace Notes Community Choir, which is for people living with dementia and their families. It's sponsored by the UT Caring for the Caregiver program here in San Antonio, and it helps people with dementia to connect, although virtually during the current COVID times. I plan to give their contact information to Mrs. W's sister when I see them in the next visit, hopefully to allow Mrs. W to continue her song with the hope of further connections. Thank you.
Oh, see, I cry every time.
Oh, you're so sweet.
Oh, no, it's just, it's like everybody's chatting. Music heals, music touches. It goes beyond all the words, and the words are also awesome. But and Loretta, she's a music teacher, and poetry is like that too. So, yeah, goes beyond the skin.
It was a fun thing to participate in, to kind of see that play out and realize, something bigger was happening.
Something else was happening.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I love it.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for sharing that. Deep breath. Our next contributor is Rachel Jennings. She's going to read for us. Tell us a little bit, Rachel, about what's going on with you, and then read for us.
Hi, I'm Rachel Jennings. I teach at San Antonio College, and just finishing up my classes this week, right before finals. And I've published a couple of volumes, a short one called Hedge Ghosts, and then there was Elijah's Farm, which was by Pecan Grove Press, and then Knoxville Girl, which was, of course, came from the ballad Knoxville Girl. I thought I would read a couple of poems. The one poem by me, and then another one by Nicole Metz that I liked a lot. And so this poem is called Disclaimer. Just notice, this poetry has bumps and uneven places. These imperfections and inconsistencies are part of the fabric and are not flaws. Free verse is a natural product and thus will have a small number of intrinsic flubs. It is advisable to read each line several times and more slowly than one might think is needed. These flubs are small, cosmetic, and do not affect the poem's performance and end-use projects, prayers, petitions, protests. Many readers will be happy to leave jagged edges to show the innate character of lines.
Rachel, your
Other-
voice skipped. We can't hear you now. Something happened. We couldn't hear there. When you look up, we can hear you. I'm sorry to interrupt you, but we want to hear you. And when you look up, we hear you just fine, but something happened. You went a little bit too dim, so we couldn't hear you. Maybe you could start again.
Sorry, we'll
Thank
see
you.
if this works.
Okay.
Let's see. Says, notice, this poetry has bumps and uneven places. These imperfections and inconsistencies are part of the fabric and are not flaws. Free verse is a natural product and thus will have a small number of intrinsic flubs. It is advisable to read each line several times and more slowly than one might think is needed. These flubs are small, cosmetic, and do not affect the poem's performance in the end-use projects, prayers, petitions, protests. Many readers will be happy to leave jagged edges to show the innate character of lines. Other readers may want more smoothly woven material. For such users, we suggest cutting out naughty questions, tear-stained discolorations, and other anomalies. That we remove much rough phrasing that goes against the warp and woof of the stanzas. A few snags may still be present in places. Most tangles and loose threads will disappear with careful scissoring. Free verse is an organic material and natural variances may be present in published poetic texts. Still, if you know what questions to ask a poem, and if you know what to look for, you will love the natural form. And then this next poem is by Nicole M. Metz. I just really thought it was lovely. I love encountering poems, just to have them arrive and encounter a poem. So Nicole Metz is an MFA student at Chatham University and a grade school teacher who's in this volume. And this is called Oil and Light. It's inspired by a walk in a thunderstorm in New York City. I walk on a black mirror of moving water as the shimmering moon drops her children inside the drapes of black ocean waves. Like stars, they branch and bleed into everything. A woman runs with her purse on her head. Neon ghosts float on the iridescent inky palette, edged of sky, the silhouettes drip and bend on the stagnant wet concrete, curling exhaust, and that hiss and honk of impatient cars. Glossed umbrellas scurry and seem to follow an elongated glow that dissipates behind them. They watch and talk in inlets, indigo flickers inside dark ocean ripples and curves of light. Warm in its white light and sweet roasting, a simple hot dog stand, now a beacon with an aroma to overpower the roar, the rush, the rot in the urban wet air. The attendant's cigarette bounces as he speaks. People swallow warmth, then continue into the kaleidoscope of water, oil, and light on the asphalt.
Lovely. Thank you so much, Rachel. Beautiful, beautiful, good choices. Of course, any poem would be a good choice. Right? I chose them all. So that's the fun thing about doing this is I like them all. Awesome. Thank you so much, Rachel. And you guys, the poem that Rachel read first about the fabric and the poem and how, there's snip stuff off or leave it in, that's the pushcart nominee. That's the poem I nominated for the pushcart. I thought it was so clever. Such a clever analogy. So, and I love that thing about that line about it still works for poems for prayers, petitions, and what's the other one? Resistance. What's the other one?
Protests.
Protests. Prayers, petitions, and protests, which is what we write, right? That's what we write. I love it. Okay. So thank you, Rachel, so much. Sandy Stromberg is coming to us from Houston, Texas tonight. Sandy, tell us a little bit and then read for us. Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you. I love this book, and I think all of us as poets can appreciate the incredible, I've put out edited two anthologies and been involved in several others. And one of the most demanding aspects is to sequence the poems and to put them into divisions. And I think Dee is really a master at doing this. On one of mine, I just went in alphabetical order of the poets because dividing them into sections was beyond my mind scope. So I always admire when it's done so well like this. So kudos, Dee. And I thought this was fun too, because at first I thought I don't have any poems. And then I looked back through my poems and I thought, I have these uplifting poems that I haven't honored. I haven't sent them out in the same way I would send out something that seemed soul searching and deep and what have you. And yet these were poems that when I wrote them, they made me happy. So I was delighted when I found that I easily had 5 poems. I had to cut down the number that I pulled out in the end. So thank you. And I'm going to read, I have 4 poems in here, but I'm going to read 3 of them, and then I want to read someone else's poem. And I have to say, Susan, I was going to read your poem on the Daffodilian tribute. And then I saw, Susan's going to be reading. So I chose something else, but I thought that poem was so uplifting. So you wondered about it. Well, I just thought it was really wonderful and a great one to end the book on. So my first poem is Communion. It's on page 52, and it's in the section Blaze and Rotations. Communion. Windshield wipers frenetic. I bumped down the dark, pocked road, headlights wavering across the pavement. My workload has spilled like the rain into evening, and I break my day-old sandwich in half, bread dry, filling sparse. A woman with dinner candles in her eyes breaks beside me, the warmth of an intimate evening surrounding her car. She stares my way while I chew another chalky bite, tilts her head in a judgment I fear echoes my own. As if it were a glass of wine, she raises her sandwich in a toast. Though I turn left and she goes straight, my lips taste laughter. And the next poem is in Plucked Up, the next section, and it's called Undiscovered Song. And it was about seeing my younger son kind of go off into the wild blue yonder, and not knowing what was going to happen. So, Undiscovered Song. He followed me like a duckling, this second son, clutching my skirt as soon as he walked. Even on this visit home, he has me on a short leash. He who lived in Brooklyn's Flatbush Avenue, secured a job in Istanbul, weathered our broken home. When I tell him he's a man now, he pleads, but I want to be a little boy. He is a Peter Pan, a blonde flyboy about to board China Air, his whole world stashed in a guitar case, a ragged red satchel, a backpack. I want to ask what happened to the rest, the Stratocaster and amplifiers, the quilt my mother made. I, who am mired in possessions, unable to jettison their weight, afraid to lose my wins and wares. I laud his escape from this hand-me-down hook as I mourn the startling losses. At security's glass wall, I watched the silent movie of our separation. Guards pull him aside to unpack a clown car of instruments, guitar, Tibetan bells, mallet, drumsticks, and one horsehair bow wrapped in socks and red plaid boxers. Puzzled faces turn toward him. He turns toward me, winks and shrugs. A composer, he's gathering notes as he repacks. Music to reflect his mood, this place, the story. I watch his banter, and when everyone laughs, his wry grin. He puts one foot and then another on the escalator, his contrary eyes on mine. He rises, up, up, up. Each second takes him further away until he reaches the top, a troubadour stepping into his restless, undiscovered song. So. And the last one is in the next section. And in all this mourning, there is a prayer for you. And I just loved these sections of the book. Bravo, Dee, really. And this one takes place on Tinos, which is one of the Greek islands in the Cyclades. We went on a sailing trip years ago when our sons were really small through the Cyclades. And it was like having Homer's being on the wine dark sea. So on Tinos, how can I explain the softness of prickly rosemary, the warmth that flooded me as the Greek driver jumped from the taxi, picked a bouquet of branches, then laid them in my unexpected arms? For the mother of two blonde, blue-eyed boys, his dark eyes seemed to say, his tongue not knowing the English words. With a deep bow, he draped me in the dew of the sea, like Aphrodite when she rose from the Aegean. Here on Tino's gray-brown hills, high above the water, his gift awakened a thirst to be seen, sustenance for those long, dry spells of drought. In the flicker of dreams, I've learned to gather rosemary's wild scent for remembrance. So. And the last one I'm going to read is, having let Susan have her day with the Daffodilian tribute, is the poem right before that by a friend, Judy Youngers. And it's called Just Once. And I think it's a poem that embodies something that we all long for. So it's fitting to be a prelude into the Daffodilian tribute. Just once, only once in all my life do I have this one particular day. How to open it, use it, savor it. In times of no bordered days, they're easy to squander. I start under the sunrise tree, stare at my blank page. No lifting of pen during this scribe of morning pages. My eye and hand blind to blue lines and margins I know are there on the moist paper with corners curling. I pause to feast on blush of peach with cloudy clots of cream. Then choose this day to dream. Forget the edges, the strictures. I toss aside my ever-growing list of to-dos, annoying shoulds and oughts. On this singular day, in pajamas, I grab a trowel, dig, mold something new from a castaway, entreat it to grow. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Sandy. I thank you so much. To your point about thinking you didn't have poems about miracles, you would not believe how many poets over the last number of years that I've been collecting anthologies that I claim will encourage, uplift, and inspire. And I've been asking for poems from poets about things that uplift, encourage, and inspire. You would not believe how many poets are like you at the beginning when I ask, and they say, I don't have anything like that, because we're all so busy protesting and resisting and I don't know what we're doing, processing to being socially active, being environmentally active. And so I appreciate your digging around for what you could find that was miraculous that you could offer. And that was sort of the point of this was, well, okay, so then look for something because it's happening every day. It's happening right under our noses, right there. That's the antidote to everything that's happening that isn't miraculous or doesn't seem miraculous or feels bad. So let's just focus. Let's focus on the good stuff for a minute. So I so appreciate all of you who did do that and send us these poems. So maybe we can make this a thing. So our last contributor to read tonight is Cindy Heiser, coming all the way from Austin, Texas. Cindy, tell us a little bit and then read for us.
I'm so glad to be here tonight. It's been lovely to hear the selections that everyone else has read, both of their own work and others. And so I have, I'm here in Austin. I have a little book of poems called Burning Number 5, power plant poems. They're all about related to the experience of working in a power plant. I have a full-length collection coming out, hopefully sometime next year, I'm thinking, from Three Taos Press called Cartography. So tonight I'm going to read, first of all, I was so delighted to have 4 poems selected for this anthology. And I too, at first was like, gosh, what do I have, that works with this theme? And then I started combing through and there was plenty. So I'm going to read 2 of mine, and then I selected some poems, 3 poems from others in the book. So the first one I'll read mine first. And my first one I'll read is on page 15. It's called Rose Garden. Late morning, and I bend my face toward red, yellow, peach, white, as I once did when choosing for my love, desiring an aromatic sweetness. Scent dimmed by distance from dawn, pink-streaked petals remind me of the climbers that skirted shade on the chain link at the house where I grew. Loose, flat flowers, far from my conception of roses, invisible from the drive where another bush survived, thick-stemmed and blood-bloomed even in December. Like my mother now at 90, sharp and full of will. Once I remembered only thorns. How was it I missed so many blossoms? Then the next one is called Childhood Treasures. It's on page 68. Red corn cobs found by the curb. Cigarette filters with their brown centers, fibers peeling apart. Leggy stems of the bush we stripped to make bows and arrows, dimpled poison berries we smeared on absent arrowheads. Crawling in a refrigerator box, tank tracks in the snow. Green plastic army men. Wooden puzzle map of the states. Chatty Cathy before her string broke. Illustrated Bible stories so beautiful we tore out the pages. Roly-polies, garter snakes, the woods behind Grandma's house, ice from the milkman's truck, singing Beulah Land, cap rocket, red paper strip of caps, a Dunkin' Donut with Dad after groceries, thunder sheet of the utility room door opening, Grandma's voice welcoming us in. So there are just so many wonderful, wonderful poems in this book. And I too selected a poem by Judith Youngers. This poem is on page 54. It's called Resourcefulness. Control tower, come in, please. Wanted, liquid refresh on Central Flyway. Expansive wetlands not needed, brief stopover only, request immediate reply. Could it be smaller than a bathtub? Necessity creates make-do solutions in nature and our domestic day-to-day. A drink and small pond for paddling, big enough for 2, please. What about a narrow pool, a deep tire tread, grooved last week by the 18-wheel delivery truck, then rain-filled at the gravelly side of the local supermarket? A wee green space adjoins it, dandelion lit for visitors' delight. We welcome trial splashdowns. No reservation or minimum stay required. With a go ahead, a pair of black ducks, rare in these parts, swoops down like falling quotation marks, webbed landing gears out to drop precisely into the 2x4 pothole. Tucking in, the couple paddles and chuckles to each other, inviting smiles from passersby. With no advance notice and within the hour, the feathered travelers lift off for ports unknown. My next poem is by Robert Okadji. It's called Finding Shelter, and it's found on page 38. If nothing changed, what then could you learn? We display shirts, tapestries, mended socks looming in disarray, measured in pairs. The illusion is of stability, but not like the four-cornered marriage or Mount Fuji captured in the great waves curl. No, ordinary yet grand, we endure unravelings and ellipses, questions and goodbyes, loving too the synchronicities of caressed cheeks and concealed bruises, of dogs and their true needs, of old men finding shelter at last, assembling distinct lives, touching unfamiliar fabric, this thread inside, multiplied, woven anew. And I will close with the poem on page 25 by Raymond Burns called Do Not Despair. Do not despair in deep December gloom. Dream cold nights of monarchs on the wing. Our tulip bulbs will freeze before they bloom. When blizzards weave through slats on snow fence looms, suppress those longings isolation brings. Wear saffron scarves in deep December gloom. A barren birch sweeps clouds with tattered brooms. Persistent winds nudge an empty swing as tulips meditate before they bloom. When lakes lie still and moan in frozen tombs, anticipate how songbirds sound in spring. Feed chickadees in deep December gloom. Come March, the stillness in your shadowed room will stir from notes the passing snow geese sing as tulip spears protrude before they bloom. An April day will stir your burdened womb. From frost to flower, seasons form a ring. Do not despair in deep December gloom. Our tulip bulbs will freeze before they bloom. Thank you all.
Oh, thank you so much, Cindy. That was beautiful. Loretta. I like the hat. I love the hat. I just love the hat. And I want to say that last poem that Cindy read was also one of the Pushcart Prize nominees. So thank you so much for reading that. I just love that repetition, that incantatory nature of that, the whole layered level of meaning about the flowers and also about life and what we're going through. And there were a lot of poems like that that we collected in this book. So hopefully it will be a healing presence in the world. And thank you all so much for being here tonight for this final reading, and keep yourselves well and enjoy every day. Find something that is miraculous for you, even if it is, as Tom says, the joy of a deep breath. So we will be doing a reading live in San Antonio at some point in the spring, but we'll keep you posted. So those of you who are close enough can gather around and we can hug, and hopefully by then we can hug and be safe and but we're going to try to choose an outdoor venue as well. So, it'll be nicer weather at that point. We hope. We don't know anymore, right? But anyway, go ahead and unmute yourselves, all of you, and we'll do our celebratory goodbye that we always do, and give yourselves a big whoop, whoop, woo! Yay!
Fabulous. Thank
So
you.
much, everybody.
Yay.
Thank you, Dee, for the chance to hear all these poems.
Yeah.
Ken, thank you so much for attending as a listener, and Cece Mullen and Kate, thank you so much for being here as a listener. Loretta, Thank you. It's such a precious thing to be heard. So in poets, we're always happy when somebody besides the poets shows up for the reading. So good job. Thank you all very much. And be sure and give this book for a gift at some point in the future for a birthday or for Christmas or Hanukkah, or just because someone needs to be cheered up or someone would like to have some beautiful words on their shelf. It's available through Robin at the library or on Amazon. So, Robin,
Yes.
a big cheer for Robin Stauber.
Oh,
Just in. Woo!
thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Robin, so much for making all
No,
of
I'm, and it's so wonderful to hear all these poems being read. And I don't think we did that with the last book. You know, it was pre-COVID, and I think we just kind of did 1 or 2 or 3 or 4 readings, but we didn't, there's something a little more intimate about doing these monthly Zooms, I think, and having people share, and it's been lovely.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
yeah.
Hello.
Okay. Well,
Okay. Hello?
Hi, is your anthology posted on here? I see some individual books.
Oh,
no, but I will gladly give you that
Yep.
information very quickly.
Thank you very much. I've been 2 years every Sunday on Cultivating Voices live poetry.
Yes,
with
yes.
Sandy Yanone. And your group is, I don't even know how I was fortunate enough to receive this information, but I said, sign me on, sign me on. Who are you wonderful folks? And this has been just an incredible reading that I might have to leave and go cry. It's just beautiful.
Well, also, please, all of you, I put that in the chat for you, the URL to this book.
There it is.
All right. Also, do know that this will be up on the library's website as a recording in the archives, and that all of the readings that we've done for this miracle series of readings, not all of them were from this book, but many of them were, but some were before we decided to just do the book. Anyway, there's a whole 6-7 months worth of readings on the library's website, and that is just looking for Patrick Heath Public Library. Patrick Heath Public Library. And Kate, if you would like my personal email, I can put you on my invite list. It's dellisphelps@gmail.com. Anybody's welcome to have that. I think everybody else has it. dellisphelps@gmail.com. But you can find me also on, all the social media stuff. Just connect with me or through Women's Poets too. And
Thank you, Dee.
glad you're
It's
here.
really important because on Cultivating Voices, we went from maybe 200 readers, listeners, and we're now at 3,000, and we're across 7
Wow.
continents. And there's a wonderful agreements of how we present things. And I believe everyone that has read here tonight would be absolutely welcome to join Cultivating Voices live poetry. Sandy Yanone is the administrator, and I've been on for, I think, maybe in 2 years, about 90 Sundays. And
Wow.
I'm a
Oh,
new
wow.
poet, and I've gotten brave and submitted some things to local art shows and been accepted, and enjoying being a reader. And so I did hear Susan say she was a Nubian. Yay! Yay, Nubian.
Go for it. Yeah.
Yeah. So my motto is poetry is mindfulness, breathing.
Oh, I love that. I love it.
And your
Yeah.
group is just so beautiful. I don't even know how I was so fortunate to be here, but may the winds of change greet us all. Yeah.
Well, wonderful. Well, it's probably from Women Poets and Cultivating Voices, because I post everywhere about that, about this reading and about the book. And so I'm glad to meet you. And we're going to let everybody kind of go, but you have my email address now, dellisphelps@gmail.com.
Buenas noches. mi
And you
amigas
can
y
connect with me
amigos.
anytime.
I have to
Okay,
go.
y'all. See you next
Thank you
time.
again. Good night.
Yes. Happy holidays, everybody. Peaceful New Year's.
Bye now.